girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a
accused
judge
of
declared
Day 10 of the Karen Reed trial just so happened to be on my birthday. That's right, May 6th is my birthday, so happy birthday to me. I got to listen to the weatherman for hours, total snooze fest, by the way, but that is not where this trial began. So take a seat, alternates, and let's get to it. You know, I like a good cross-examination, so it was a total treat to start right off the bat with a little Alan Jackson and Canton Police Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. He was back on the stand, and you got to remember from yesterday, he is a lieutenant that was first on the scene to uncover some evidence. Solo cups, remember? Leaf blower, that guy. So they asked him about finding a hat or shoes, and he was like, no, I didn't find any of that. All I found was some blood that I collected in the solo cups and a broken cocktail glass. He was pressed again on going into Brian Albert's house, and if he conducted any searches to this, he said no, he didn't see any reason to. However, he did mention at one point that John could have possibly gotten into a fight that night. So I'm really not sure why the house wasn't searched. This really was honed in on, actually, and he held strong. He was very adamant that there was absolutely no reason he should have gone into the house, and actually it would have been breaking some laws on his part if he did. Jackson was like, seriously, there's a dead guy on the lawn. He looks like he's got beaten up. He's missing a shoe. He doesn't have a jacket on, and you don't want to search the house that he was supposedly going to a party at? Sus. Another crazy thing we learned was his boss, Canton Police Officer Chief Tom Keller, lives across the street. You know, this is where he got the solo cups. Okay, so he lives across the street, but one house down. He has a Ring camera. Actually, it's not a Ring camera. It's another camera, like a Ring camera, but a different brand. They asked if he got any footage from this camera, and he says no. He said he already knew he couldn't see anything at the Alberts house because he has gotten screenshots before from that particular camera when he's picked up packages for his boss from time to time when he was on vacation. Well, they kind of pressed him on this also. They asked if he even tried or had any idea if, from the app, if there was angles or changes of the camera, which he doesn't know. So the leaf blower, the solo cups, the Stop and Shop bag, they all were honed in on again. A lot of emphasis here on if anything was sealed, if, using garden tools was something that they normally did. And he said, no, it's not something that we normally do. And no, nothing was sealed. Then he also was pressed if any kind of evidence could have been not necessarily tampered, but if anything could have gotten in there, messed up, if it was a possibility since nothing was sealed, and he had to concede and say, yes, it is possible that that could have happened. The other part of this testimony that I found to be really interesting was a photograph presented of these cups in this paper bag. These were taken right by Karen Reed's SUV. I mean, like a foot away from this broken taillight. The SUV was parked actually in what they call the Sallyport, and that's like a fancy name for a garage in the police station. Now, all of this matters because remember, those broken taillight pieces from Karen Reed's Lexus SUV, well, prosecutors say pieces of her taillight were found in the yard by John O'Keefe's body where he was hit, which is crucial evidence to suggest that her car hit John O'Keefe. Gallagher said he did not see any such pieces during that morning search. He specifically was asked about 46 pieces of broken glass, some clear, some bright red. And no, he didn't see them, but they were later recovered. Gallagher told the jury that he didn't spot one single piece of the taillight that morning. Gallagher was also asked about his friendship with Brian Higgins. Now, Brian Higgins was one of the guys at the party that night at the Alberts. And what you don't know yet, but we're soon to find out, is that Brian Higgins and Karen Reed had some very flirty text messages. And this was just days prior to John O'Keefe's death. Gallagher called Higgins his friend, one that they shared meals with, like a real friend. Gallagher said he never interviewed Higgins, but that's because Canton police recused themselves from this whole investigation before he learned that Higgins was involved. Another question defense quickly touched on was when Gallagher stepped into the Alberts' house. He went in quickly that day and he said, "Did you see the family dog?" To which he said, "No." Then on redirect, this is when the prosecution gets to come up and clarify some things. Special Prosecutor Hake Brennan basically tried to shore up Gallagher's decision. He asked if Gallagher had any reason to ask for this warrant to go into the house. And Gallagher said firmly, no reason at all. And if he had probable cause, he would have searched. And he said, yeah, absolutely. If I had probable cause, I would have. So the prosecution was really emphasizing look, Gallagher wasn't negligent. He just didn't have any indication of foul play inside the house that morning. So that's why he didn't go in. Gallagher was then dismissed and prosecution brought in another clip from one of Karen Reed's many interviews that she's done. These clips make me cringe every single time.
So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder. I gave an interview with ABC with Matt Gutman. I think this was whom I gave the interview to, and I said, he asked why was I saying, could I hit him, did I hit him? And I said, yeah, my first thought was I'd been out late, I'd been drinking, and he's in the general vicinity of where I last saw him. I mean, they talk about the left side of the property and the right as if it's, Hammersmith Farms. It's a postage stamp. It's 50 feet. So he's in the front yard to the left of the front door, and no one's coming out of the house. Jen's telling me nobody's seen him. So I'm thinking, Jesus, was I starting to pull away and I ran over his foot? He's roughly where I left him. So yeah, when I found him, I was thinking, did I clip him somehow?
Yikesies. Okay, so maybe they wanted to wake the jury up a bit with those clips before they brought in the next witness to the stand, Meteorologist Robert Gilman. This guy was such a nice man. You could just tell. It's hard to go in swinging with this one. I mean, his life's work is reading weather and charting precipitation. Gilman described just how bad the storm was on January 29, 2022. He says, this was the biggest January storm in history. He went over the Snowfall and how at about 12:30 that morning, it could track a cat. They asked him, what do you mean by track a cat? He was like, that's what I mean. It could track a cat. And I think what he was getting at is that it was a very light dusting of snow. And then by 6 a.m., so that was at 12:30, and then by 6 a.m., it was just a couple inches. The mass snowfall of that day, the 29th, didn't come until well into the afternoon. Although this testimony was short in what I would say we actually needed to know, it was pretty long and daunting for the jury. There were a lot of charts brought up, discussions about how to predict weather, how much snow is where and where we collect it and how we collect it and how we know how cold things get and how cold the ground gets and how snow sticks. You get it. Prosecution pretty much brought him there that day to say it was cold and it was snowy. But defense did get him to say that it only could track a cat at 12:30 and barely more than a cat by 6 a.m. Then we got to see my old friend, Trooper Nicholas Guarino again. He was brought back on the stand for some more digital evidence. I mean, we can't get enough of this guy, right? Remember, he is the one that has the extractions from O'Keefe's and McCabe's phone and probably more, but that's what we're talking about. And today we went through John O'Keefe's phone those early morning hours, really the nighttime from 12:30 to 6. And it got pretty intense. The prosecution used Guarino to introduce a series of voicemails that Karen Reed had left for John in those early hours. They actually played these voicemails to the jury, and I will play a couple for you.
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
According to his reporting, there were 8 voicemails in total. Karen had actually called John that night between 12:33 and 6:03, 53 times. Whoa. Girlfriend for sure did not sleep. Now I want you to pay close attention to this particular voicemail. There are no words, but you can hear beeping and then some footsteps and rustling around. I'm pretty sure this is when she would have pulled into John's house that night. The beeping to me is where you get close to like a garage or another car or something when you're parking and your car starts to beep at you, telling you that you're close. And then you can kind of hear footsteps, which I think is probably her going into the house. It's interesting because of the timing. This voicemail was left at 12:41 and 35 seconds. Guarino's testimony itself was mainly a vehicle, no pun intended, to get these voicemails and call logs into evidence. It really painted a clear picture of how erratic Karen was that night and possibly just how erratic she is in general. But this, for sure, is not playing into Karen's favor. And cross-examination, well, they didn't feel like they needed any. I think defense wanted to move right along past any piece of this evidence. So we went to lunch, and after lunch break, they played another clip.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tapped him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this was the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
Well, just another snidbit of Karen's media tour, which really comes with no commentary from the Commonwealth, so they move right on. And they called Canton Police Lieutenant Charles Ray. He testified that he went over to John O'Keefe's house the morning with his partner. It was very brief. It was straightforward. It was anticlimactic. This guy really had no reason to really be on the stand, in my opinion. He was up and down within 5 minutes, and no one really asked him anything more than if they saw John at his house, which obviously he didn't. He said he saw no one, and so they left. Moving on to the last witness of the day, Massachusetts State Trooper Kevin O'Hara. If Gallagher's testimony from the morning was what he really didn't find, well, Trooper O'Hara was about to tell us what he did find later that day. He led a team that conducted a secondary search of the crime scene at 34 Fairview Road on the evening of January 29th, 2022. And this is when crucial evidence is found. Those taillight pieces, John's shoe, they were all discovered that night. O'Hara explained that his team was briefed to look specifically for a missing taillight from Karen Reed's car and John O'Keefe's missing shoe. By then, investigators had an idea of what might be out there under the snow. Wink, wink. So they get a search team out there in the blizzard. I mean, it kind of eased up, but they got out there at night with headlamps. He testified that they began the search around 5 o'clock, and within minutes, you guys, they found taillights. Brennan, the prosecutor, asked if O'Hara remembered the first piece of evidence, and he said yes, it was a piece of the taillight. Shortly after that, O'Hara said the team located the missing shoe belonging to John O'Keefe. This was against the curb. I mean, can you believe it that they found all this stuff within just minutes of being out there after like the snow dumped? It's mind-blowing. They kept searching for about 55 minutes in total and wrapped up around 6:15. They knew where to search because they were told where John O'Keefe's body was, and so they had a proximity of maybe 100 feet to search in. They taped off the search area at that point. They also were asked about something interesting on cross. Cross asked them if there were other people, other cops in the area actually at the address when they were there. And he replied yes, which is interesting. He also said they were in plain clothes and he really didn't know what they were doing there, but they weren't, where he was, where the evidence was collected. All of it sounds super sus to me. Another thing that the defense honed in on was scene security. They asked if O'Hara taped off the yard that morning, which of course he didn't. He only went there that night. He asked if the yard was ever taped off. It wasn't. So basically anyone could wander in the area between those early morning hours and the night. This goes to the heart of the defense's theory, by the way, that the evidence could have just been introduced later. O'Hara answered that no way. The weather helped to secure the scene. I mean, who wants to drive in a blizzard? I don't know, maybe somebody trying to cover up a murder. He also explained that if anyone had walked on or disturbed the area before the 5 o'clock search team got there, that they would have seen footsteps in the snow and a sign of disturbance. And he said there were no footsteps. It was fresh, undisturbed snow. And with their tracking experience, they'd be able to tell if anyone had accessed it. He was also questioned if he has ever done a crime scene in a crazy blizzard like this, which his answer was no. O'Hara was confident, though, that there was no sneaky business happening in that yard between the morning and the evening. No mysterious footprints, no indication of planted evidence. The jurors have a lot to chew on. Just think, if you're a juror, I mean, we are alternates, right? You heard that Karen said, "I hit him" at the scene from prior testimony. Then you get this veteran cop admitting that he collected evidence in solo cups. Then you have another cop admitting that the same one that also admitted that he absolutely did not see any taillights. And then later, magical pieces of evidence show up. I mean, does it raise reasonable doubt? It's such a roller coaster. Okay, we, the alternates, it's our job to not pick sides yet. I know it's hard, but we've got to stay laser focused and report exactly what is being said on the stand. That's all for today's episode of The Alternate, Day 10. It was certainly eventful, and I am coming back to you tomorrow with Day 11. So thank you for listening and sticking with us through all these twists and turns. If you found this breakdown helpful, please subscribe and share The Alternate with your friends. We also have bonus content where we take a deep dive, and by deep dive, I mean Margot and I get to really tell you what we think, and that is on Patreon, and you go to patreon.com/The Alternate. I'll see you tomorrow.